Angelo asked me to go through this. We went over it last night. Help me through it, because you guys are attorneys, and legalese is not my, I'm a social worker. I don't pretend to be a law specialist. But what's happening right now, and who just told me that they're gonna vote on it maybe Wednesday, the House? Someone just told me that. I don't know if that's accurate or not, but we're talking about this is real time right now in regards to Pennsylvania and its legislation regarding medical marijuana. It's Senate Bill 3. I think it's just moved to the House, providing for the medical use of cannabis in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Okay? My boss is the queen of marijuana. She knows how to say all the words. She knows all the specifics of it. I tend to know more about heroin. So hang with me, and I think the important pieces are the law and the loopholes in that law, and the reason that we need to be educated about these laws. They've got a lot of work to make these usable laws, okay? First of all, this is kind of marijuana 101. Marijuana contains THC. When people are getting tested, that's what you're looking for metabolites of THC, okay? It is what makes a person high. Marijuana, I can't say this word. Come on now, someone say it for me. Cannabidol, maybe. I can't say it.
Cannabinoid.
There are at least 85 different cannabinoids that have been isolated from cannabis, and THC is one of them, okay? And all of these different things have effects on people, but the one that we typically look at is THC. In 1970, we talked about this earlier, marijuana, the THC content was 3 to 5%, okay? Today, it can be anywhere from 10 to 50%, depending on the quality of the marijuana, okay? And we talked about dabbing, and the THC content can be up to 80%. It's just the content of the THC. So, in other words, in that wax stuff, the THC content in that is 80% of the mass, okay? Okay, and that's what I just said. Wax and shatter concentrates of marijuana use are up, and these contain 80 to 90% THC. Remember I said that was the crack of the marijuana world, okay? Marijuana is federally illegal at this point, okay? And it's still illegal in 27 states, including Ohio and Pennsylvania. So if you want to kind of take a look at where it's illegal. Now, the purple states are total legal. Legal for personal use, legal for recreational use. Have to be 21 and over, so it's been completely legalized. So we've got Alaska, Oregon, Washington, and Colorado being most recent. A lot of information coming out of Colorado in regards to the impact of that law. They went up 300% in homelessness because everyone moved to Colorado because they wanted to use their weed. And there's a lot of things about products that that came out, edibles they're called. Little gummy bears are just little like villains of the candy world, aren't they? But they have all sorts of different things, the toxicity of them creating a lot of problems with children. So, but that's different than what we're talking about here in the law here, okay? Now in Ohio, we talked, it is decriminalized in Ohio. So if you have a possession of a certain amount, a small amount, it's like nothing more than a parking ticket. So for people that say, well, we should be putting people with marijuana in jail, in Ohio anyhow, they don't go to jail. And we had a sheriff there last night, and a lot of people say, well, if we would just legalize it, then our law enforcement wouldn't have to be working so hard at going after these pot dealers. Believe me when I say, law enforcement does not actively go after pot dealers, right, Mr. DA? They got way more big problems than that. And typically, if they come into a big fine, it's only because they're going in there for some other reason, and then they might find a grow or, you know, all the materials used for cultivation. Okay, the dark green states are medical and decriminalization. Okay, see if I can, I don't know if I can name all those little states up there in the east. But, so they have medical marijuana. I think most people know stories about the medical marijuana in California and kind of what people are getting away with, I guess. Okay? Now, here's what your bill says. Smoking of dried plant material is not allowed. So in other words, you can't smoke a joint because you've got a prescription for marijuana, okay? Now initially that language also included the vapes, which we talked about, the little vaporizers, the e-cigarettes. But they took that language out, so that now is okay. However, any of the following made from plants is permissible. Any oils, ointments, I don't know what tinctures are. Does anyone know what tinctures are?
It's sort of like, it's a mixture, liquefied mixture.
Thank you.
Less than gel-like.
Okay. I hate saying things that I don't know what.
It's somewhere between ointments and liquids. Where it is on the list.
That sounds pretty good, okay. Liquids, gels, pills, and similar substances. So in other words, you can't smoke it, but there's all sorts of other different ways that it is legal, or will be, okay? So let's talk about a few of those words. Vaporization is permitted for the use of items similar to e-cigarettes or vapes to be used for the inhalation of marijuana oils. That will only be permitted for cancer, seizure disorders, or post-traumatic stress disorders. All right? Let's talk about what is medical use. It's the acquisition, possession, or use of medical cannabis by a registered patient or patient representative. That becomes important. Those two words become important. Patient or patient representative. All right? The patient is the individual who has an established practitioner-patient relationship and has been diagnosed with a qualified medical condition. Another important thing, what the heck is a practitioner-patient relationship? See, the same problem with other prescribed medications, okay? The relationship established between a patient and healthcare practitioner following an assessment of the medical history and current condition and the conduct of a personal examination. So if you go in that day and you have that appointment, you can be prescribed that day. All right? So, when you're talking about relationship, I talk about relationships with our clients. That's something that's built. It's not something that I go, how do? And we now have a relationship. That is something.
Can't do it online.
Can't do it online, and you can't do it, in a 10-minute appointment. But per the law, you can. Okay. Let's talk about qualified medical conditions. Okay, those are all the qualified medical conditions. Cancer, epilepsy, seizure disorders, ALS. Then you get into, one of the things, I was talking to my boss about it before I did this, traumatic brain injury and post-concussion syndrome. We talked about that here. It is actually counterintuitive to use THC for those. It's actually, so that's one thing. MS, PTSD, fibromyalgia, HIV. The last one, a condition authorized by the department. What is the department? Okay, the department is the State Board of Medical Cannabis. This will be comprised of 12 individuals who will be responsible for establishing all the guidelines. So if they're presented with a variety of other medical conditions, that is something that can be, will affect what are the medical conditions that are permitted for this. That notebook out of my car. Okay. Okay. Oftentimes, and this this is something in Ohio, even when we had our law, which was for general use. But boy, they love to parade the little kids in front of you. Okay, you know, the little kids with epilepsy and they have seizure disorders. Proponents of medical marijuana claim that medical marijuana is only for the sick and dying. However, the studies show in states who have legalized medical marijuana, the average age of a user is 32, white male, and most of those do not seek a recommendation for either cancer, HIV, glaucoma, or multiple sclerosis. The vast majority, 90–40% of those people are going to the doctor because of pain. Let's talk, we'll go back because I didn't talk about this last night, with opiates. You know, that's pain medication. And people say, well, it's a hell of a lot better than giving them opiates because we know the addiction issues with opiates. You know, there's some real issues. And we talked about pain being the fifth, now it's the fifth vital sign. The reality is that that is one of the first things they ask you about. And the first things they try to eliminate when you're in the emergency room. Also eliminates all of your symptoms, so I'm not sure how good that's doing for you, because now they don't know what's really going on with you. But that's just my opinion. Here's what's happening with pain in America. For people who are taking a lot of opiates, okay, there's a lot of people on pain medication, and we know that. We had, they did a study where they had some opiate users come in a room, and they had some people that were not opiate users in a room. They were looking at pain tolerance. And so they had to put their hand in a thing of freezing water with ice. Opiate users lasted 15 seconds. They had no tolerance for that. A regular person, without being an opiate user, could manage about a minute and 15. And it was very painful. It's painful to have your hand in an icy, icy water, but they could last over a minute. And an opiate addict could only last 15 seconds. So, and it's something with benzos, we talked a lot about benzos. This is anecdotally. The people that come into my court who are benzo addicts have the highest rate of anxiety. So they're taking all of this stuff so that they don't have it. Yet, what's happening is they've reduced their tolerance to exactly what they're trying to get rid of. So, does that make sense to you? You understand what I'm saying? Same with opiates. So you've got these people, it is not fixing the problem. It is bandaging it. It's hiding it, the problem. Doesn't mean the problem is fixed, what is causing the pain isn't fixed, what is causing the depression or anxiety isn't fixed. It's just a mask. And so all it's doing is creating a tolerance level where you need more and more. And in fact, it's counteracting what it's supposed to be doing. It's creating more of the problem. So pain is getting thrown in everywhere. Everything's going to help pain. And this is why most of the people are looking for weed. Okay? In 1979, after 11 states decriminalized, that's what Ohio did, the United States saw the highest rates of marijuana use in history by teenagers, more than 51% by high school seniors that year. Why? Huh? Availability, why else?
They couldn't get in trouble.
Huh?
They couldn't get in trouble.
They're not going to get into my trouble. What else? That's what we're talking about when we were talking about pills. We're making it okay. We're taking away the stigma of use. And we've done that with pills like crazy. Among youth aged 12 to 17, marijuana usage rates are higher in states with medical marijuana laws compared with those without such laws. And again, not huge rates of difference. I don't want to go crazy and say, oh, marijuana! But at the same time, there are some pieces to this, and I think the most important ones are upcoming. Now, we talked a little bit about this. There have been some approved medications. Marinol is FDA approved. It's available in the states. Its active ingredient is synthetic delta-9 THC. It's what we test for. Used for appetite stimulation and to reduce nausea. This is often used for people, with cancer, because they can't eat. They're sick all the time from the chemo, that type of thing. Okay. Sativex is in phase 3 of its FDA trials. It's an indicator for treatment of spasticity due to multiple sclerosis. Okay? It's also being tested for cancer pain, neuropathic pain of various origins. So we're probably talking about, you know, ALS, Parkinson's, that type of thing. But Pedialex, that was pretty good, huh? I like saying it that way. I didn't know how to say it last night, so I just made that up. It is a medication developed by GW Pharmaceuticals and has been granted orphan drug designation by the FDA. In other words, families of children with Dravet syndrome, that's a major seizure disorder, can apply through their physician to get this medication. When you're seeing these parents kind of put in front of you, are they educated enough? Do they know what's available to them? Okay? This medication is a controlled, closed investigational drug that contains cannabinoids, I can't say that one, of the cannabis plant. So that is something that's available through the FDA. Okay? Any questions? Yes, ma'am.
And these have all been tested so you know what you're getting.
That's FDA approved. And I said the only thing I can say between opiates and heroin, the only good thing I can say about opiates is at least when you put it down your gullet, you know what you've got. You know, heroin, you may have something that's 50%, you may have something that's 80%, you may have something that has fentanyl in it, all sorts of stuff. But with an Oxycontin, it's an Oxycontin every single time you take it. Okay, so this is where, in my world, the rubber meets the road. When they were doing all of this, and Brenda, my boss, was teaching me about our law, our experience was this. They were putting all this stuff together about how this was going to look. They were trying to get it to be a constitutional amendment. Therefore, people would have been...
was Ohio just medical?
It was everything.
It was everything.
It was everything. And now they're going back to try to get just medical. But the way they did this, they did a couple of things. Their plan was, this was through Responsible Ohio or something like that, that there were going to be 10 designated sites for growth, cultivation, and extraction. So they had them all planned. They knew where they were going to be. Huh?
Who's going to run that? The government?
They had a group, a smaller group. I think our group was 10 that was going to manage all of this. And I think about 80% of them were from responsible marijuana, in other words, pro-marijuana folks. And that was going to be our group that was going to run it. Okay? Now, there were 6 different counties, 6, 7, that were going to have these designated sites. It was already decided. I'm sorry, 4. They would have specific manufacturing facilities. They had already determined manufacturing, processing, and packaging of marijuana-infused products. They can also manufacture, process, and package marijuana accessories, paraphernalia. There would be 6 testing facilities that were going to be located near universities. Okay? This became the reason this failed in Ohio. Well, no, because what they had already decided how they were going to do this. They had already decided who was going to run these labs. They had already, and no one else could get into this.
The monopoly.
So, Ohio's legislator comes up with another law that they put on the bill, an anti-monopoly law. So even if this law had passed and the anti-monopoly law had passed, it would have gotten rid of this law. Because what they were talking about is essentially a monopoly. It was already determined who was going to, you know, to benefit from it, who was going to make it, all that kind of stuff. There was no free market to it or anything like that. So that was kind of the situation. So with us, the devil was in the details. And until that came out, and I was really surprised that the voters got as educated as they did about that piece, because I thought it was going to pass. It was pretty significant. It was, I think, it was pretty good, which, I mean, again, it surprised me. So the questions you ask with all of this stuff, who, what, where, when, why, how is this going to impact your state? Okay, You're gonna have growers licensing, processing licensing, retailer licensing. They talked about all of those things, the location of retailers. They talked about the amount of marijuana. And it was gonna be no more than 2.5 ounces per patient per 14 days. Doesn't sound like that much. What does that look like? Did you write it down? Because
Yeah, 6 or 7 joints a day.
it's, what it is 2.5 ounces. There's 25 grams in an ounce.
28.
About 28 grams in an ounce. And so what this looked like was 70 joints. And like 1 ounce per, I think 1 ounce per joint, say.
5 to 6 per day is what I wrote down.
And so you're talking about approximately 70 joints in 14 days. I could say blunts, so I sound really up, but it just doesn't come out of my mouth easily. It's joints. So 70 joints in 14 days, 5 to 6 joints a day. It's gonna keep you pretty good and high. That amount, okay? So that's what that looks like. And that's what's so important, because how many people, 2.5 ounces, that's not very much per patient per 14 days. No one knows what that means except for probably a marijuana seller who has his little scales and everything and knows.
Was there, the one thing I got to wondering, was there a percentage of THC limit on that marijuana?
They didn't say. Not that I'm aware of. Advertising. There were gonna be some limits on advertising. Could not be on radio and TV. Didn't say anything about the side of buses, of billboards, store signs, print ads, okay? Just not on
Direct
TV
mail.
or radio.
Direct mail to every household.
Direct mail to every house, it doesn't say that, very good. Okay? This is, to me, the big stuff here. How does this impact employers? This is from the law. An employer may not discriminate against an individual in the hiring or termination of benefits or otherwise penalize for being a cannabis access card holder. Okay, so can't fire them just because they become a medical marijuana user. Only if the employer can prove the employee is abusing or misusing their medical cannabis on the premises during ordinary hours of business. If they terminate them beyond those rules, to do so would cause an employer to lose a licensing benefit under federal law, the American Disabilities Act. All right? A positive drug test may not be considered by an employer unless the individual unlawfully used, possessed, or was impaired while on the premises during the hours of employment. Here's the problem with impairment. There's no way to really judge that. We talked about that earlier. Okay? There is currently no accepted scientific test or level of THC in the body to prove impairment. If I have someone that comes to me in drug court and this is their levels at 185, then we're going to continue to test them and they're going to continue to have that level in the system. It's going to eventually start going down. But there's no way to determine which of those levels creates impairment legally. So that's where this becomes very sticky. So every employer would be opening themselves and their company up to a lawsuit in the event an employee would be terminated. So if you have a crew that's going to the top of poles, or you have people.
Can that come up in the interview process before you hire a person? Can you ask them if they're using a medical, you have any marijuana for medical purposes?
I would think that that would almost become like asking, you know, how old they are, what color they are, what religion they are,
What sex they are.
what sex they are. I mean, it's gotten to a point with like applications, you have to send all the stuff and you can't determine your age, you can't have it show anything because they don't want to know that. They can't even call your old place of employment and get a negative
How about
thing.
employers that do drug tests? person in drug testing.
They can do drug tests, but they can't determine their level of impairment. They could say, yeah, they're positive. Now, if someone, I would guess, if they do not have a medical card, like a medical provision, you could probably toss them. But not if they've got the prescription, I would think. But you guys would know more about that.
The situation that bothers me is childcare.
Childcare. Well, I mean, at the same time, let's think about this. You know, and I want to be fair. How many childcare providers, how many folks are going to work on Vicodin and Percocet and benzos? You know, how many people are driving on the roads just sack full of medication right now? Tons. Okay?
Do the schools have the same rules?
Let's go. First, we're going to go to law enforcement. How does it impact law enforcement?
And doesn't impairment suggest evidence-based presentations?
There's nothing, I mean, as a defense attorney, you could eat that alive. There's no way that it can be proven. Now here we go to law enforcement. A registered patient may not operate or be in physical control of any of the following with a blood content of more than 10 nanograms of THC. So law enforcement has put a number up there, 10 nanograms of THC. Can't run a motor vehicle, aircraft, motorboat, heavy machinery. Here's the problem with that. If they stop somebody and they feel like there's a concern, they would have to take every person to a medical facility for a blood test. Because that's the only way you can determine how many nanograms of THC is in their system. Okay? Impairment, in the case of the law, has been determined to be 10 nanograms. So I don't know if you work that together, but...
We do it in every case. Every DUI case gets tested.
And that's one of the things that we talked about, is how long it took to get standards for alcohol.
Yeah, but we're testing for drugs in every case for police arrest with a blood draw.
Okay.
And it's sent to a lab. And, you know, on the other hand, when you mentioned opiates, just so you know, our mixed use, alcohol is not a prevalent drug, at least in Mercer County. It's a mixed use.
It's mixed use of all the other stuff. Can you get the nanogram count then on THC?
Yeah,
Okay.
It's in the DUI law as well. That's
Okay.
just stolen from our DUI.
Okay, so that's good. So that is covered, at least for law enforcement, not so much for employers. A registered patient may not undertake any task under the influence of medical cannabis when doing so would constitute negligence or professional malpractice. Again, negligence or professional malpractice based on use is very difficult to prove. Places that any company who tries to pursue action in a kind of compromising situation. Schools. A registered patient may utilize medical cannabis in a public place, any public place. Sorry about I was doing this at 7:30 on Thursday night. Any public place, including the following: public transportation, on school grounds, in a correctional facility, and of course there's rules with schools and prisons and jails on how they disperse their medications, at a public park or a public beach. Okay? So how do schools handle this? They do have things in place for medications, okay? But now we're talking about something that perhaps may have some interest to other people. So who handles the medication? Is it the school nurse? If the school nurse handles it, now this is, remember we talked about patient representative? Does the school nurse then have to become a patient representative for any kid that has this in the law? So there's just some, I guess my feeling is that there's a lot of things, a lot of little loopholes, little side roads that haven't been dealt with effectively, and we're throwing these laws into place, and then we're having to catch up to try to close those gaps.
True, of almost everything's passed by the Pennsylvania legislature.
Well, I did try everything. Okay. One of the things when people talk about the marijuana legislations that I think is really important big tobacco years ago, okay, when they had all the tobacco lawsuits. And then even from the 70s, talked about the opportunity that marijuana would create for tobacco, you know, even when they were concerned about people using less and less. Report found in the documents that were turned over in the tobacco lawsuits of the 90s showed that consultants to Brown and Williamson said of marijuana, tobacco companies have the land to grow it, the machines to roll it and package it, and the distribution to market it. Estimates indicate that the market in legalized marijuana might be as high as $10 billion annually. So you know, where is this push coming from? Okay, there will be, I mean, if we talked about Pretty Farmer, you know, they were not looking out for our best interests when they were pushing OxyContin on us through every different way, and you know, and they keep trying. Now they're doing it with Ultram, with Ortho McNeil, one of their companies. I'm a little bit cynical, I guess.
I'd be cynical about the government wanting licensing fees and taxes as well.
Yeah.
Also, the lawsuits are gonna come from people getting, you know, how they do with the tobacco, they sue you, nobody
Right.
made them smoke, but they smoked, and then said, oh, because of the advertisement and saying it was good for you, or medical, now I'm gonna sue you for millions of dollars, and we're the taxpayers, and we put the laws, and so they're gonna sue us, the taxpayers.
Mm-hmm.
And I bet attorneys are already lining up.
Yeehaw!
And the earphones are gonna be the next thing, you know, the hearing damage for all these boom cars. I guess we're a little bit cynical. Just a
Talking
little
points
bit.
to take with you. Medical marijuana use would be for any age, okay? Even when you talk about the states that have marijuana laws or you know, full legalization, it's for 21 and over. And this is, Angelo kept saying this, we should not smoke our medicine. Okay, and it's not a typical thing. We should not have to vote on our medicine. Marijuana is currently the most identified drug in failed drug tests by employers. It is still illegal under federal law, and I added this one. Heroin users do not start using heroin by sticking a needle in their arm. Do I know people that I went to high school with that smoked weed and used weed and still have productive lives and don't continue to use? Yes. Do I know people who drink and drank and continue to be fine? Yes. That's not who this is about. This is about people with that addictive brain, that disease-oriented brain. I do not have one heroin addict I do have one. Because his stepdaddy taught him how to snort heroin at the age of 9. So that's my first. It's the only one I have. For the most part, they start with other things. Pills, prior to that, weed, prior to that, cigarettes, okay? So, is marijuana a breakthrough drug for everybody? No. But when we're talking about the kind of epidemic we have right now, we have to be looking at its causes and what we can do to prevent it.
Especially the message we send to the young people.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's a very, very bad message. The only reason this is being pushed so hard is because of money.
Right.
They pull out all the young kids with seizures or anything else, put them on the news, and they can think that this is what
This is what it's about.
This is not helping those kids at all.
No.
At all. Okay, I feel for the parents that suffer through this. It's tough, and they're looking for any answer they can get. And maybe in some cases it does have benefit, but it needs more study. A lot more research done on this before they start okaying it for kids. And especially for us to come in and say, yes, it's fine, let's legalize it. If you're over 21, you're okay to smoke because you're an adult. That's fine, because if you're over 21, you usually have a little more sense, you can figure it out. But when you're 15, 16, 13, 12, you don't. You say, well, mom, dad, brother, uncle, cousin, grandma, they do it, and it's okay by the government, so it must be okay. This is where we need to be careful in this big push for legalization of either medical marijuana or whatever. It's a very, very dangerous precedent that we're setting in this country, and it's being set because of the money that drives it. Everybody says, well, okay, well, they're going to smoke it, they're going to do it anyway. Let's take the taxes and put the taxes to good use. Well, as somebody said, who's in charge of this tax dollars, where's it going, what's it
And
being used for?
and Colorado has found that, I think I put it on some.
I mean, they're, like you said, they're making candies and stuff out of edibles out of Colorado now.
Taxes on marijuana would never pay for the increased social costs that would result from more users, and this is what they're finding in Colorado. They have so many social costs coming from it that the benefits of it, and they talk about black market, but I think, you know, one of the things I said, I remember Joe Jerk and I were sitting in a car and we were talking about legalizing, and I said, well, we already have legal drugs. They're prescriptions. How are we doing with them? That would be my answer. We're not doing very good with the legal stuff that we have already. And we've got to get better about how we're dispensing, how we're prescribing, how responsible we're being, who's being permitted to do it, all of that stuff. And so now we're going to throw another one into the mix. Alcohol's legal. How are we doing with alcohol?
I do want to say, as a parent of a child who had seizures, you do get a little bit desperate.
Absolutely.
And so maybe you don't have good sense either,
Right.
where it comes to whether this ought
Because
to
you're
be
searching
legalized.
for whatever you
Hey,
can help your child out.
you know, and I said, when my dad was dying of cancer, if they hadn't gotten him oxys, I would have. You know, I didn't want to see him in pain.
And
And
that's
as family members, we're going to do what we can.
And that's what that was meant for, it was meant for terminally ill people.
Right.
That's supposedly why it was invented,
Right.
again, that's another story, but yeah.
But I think that's, you know, that exists, and we understand that, but we've got to be better about how we're doing it, because it's seeping into everything else. Yes, ma'am?
I don't understand how they are cutting down on writing prescriptions out for vitamins and so forth, and the people who really are in a lot of pain and really need them can't get the skills right now, but now they want to legalize marijuana. I mean, nothing makes sense. The whole thing doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't make sense, and you've got, because of the epidemic which we have now, people are kind of shouting out. I know in Ohio they've got all sorts of, we've got an opiate czar now. We're talking a lot about a lot of different alternatives for people with addiction issues. There is some blowback, but there's also a lot of things that are happening to address some of the prescription stuff in the criminal justice field. There's a program in Ohio called ORS, which is Ohio. It's something about, it's a way all pharmacists and all doctors have to, like, register the medications that they are prescribing. So if you get an ORS report on someone, and Dr. House was here last night, he showed me the report on somebody. He's a Suboxone doc, so he's showing me how it works. But, we fly. But, I think that those are out there now, where it used to be voluntary, but I think it's become something that's been required now of all pharmacists. So you see, patient A comes in, and he's gone to Dr. S, and Dr. S has prescribed him this many things, but oh wait, here's Dr. B, and Dr. B's prescribed him all these things, and oh my goodness, look at Dr. X, he's prescribed. And so it's trying to catch those people who are doctor shopping, and also catch those doctors who are irresponsibly prescribing.
I understand that, but what I'm saying is, now they're introducing marijuana, they want to legalize it. I mean, that makes no sense to me.
It's because it's just adding to the problem that already
Well,
exists.
again, they're doing it because of the money.
Yeah.
This is all being done for money generation.
They're not gonna make money in vitamins, they're gonna make money in marijuana.
Well, I get that.
I have a question. I actually heard this on one of those radio talk shows, that in Colorado, since they've legalized, marijuana, whatever, you can never say the other word, C-word either, so, since they legalized it, the traffic accidents have just skyrocketed.
I didn't add a lot about Colorado on here because it's a different law. It's a generic law. It's just about legalization as a whole. But they've got all sorts of information coming out of Colorado. A lot of people were talking about, well, if we would, it's like prohibition. Well, if we would get rid of all the laws, then there wouldn't be a black market anymore. But the cost of legal Colorado weed is way more, is way more than what you can get it on the street for. So, and it's not as potent. So there's still a strong underlying black market that's going on in Colorado.
There'll be even a bigger black market. Because, you know, once we open this up to the younger generation, they're not gonna be able to get it legally through the stores and the dispensary and everything else. They're still gonna buy it through the black market. So I mean, if you think the black market is not gonna figure it out and target younger kids, they will. So when they use that defense, if you legalize it, it's gonna stop it. That's just absolutely absurd.
And there's, I mean, as far as accidents are up. There are trips to the emergency room. They have edibles. So they have like these gummy bears that are maybe not little tiny ones, but they're bigger ones. But they're 10 doses. 10 doses. So a little kid doesn't know, I should just eat an ear. Because that's one dose. Kids eating the whole gummy bear. Kids ending up overdosing on marijuana and ending up in the hospital. They have cookies that are 10 doses. They're this big. You know what I mean? They have they're marketing things, like they have like these things, Pop-Tarts. But they're Pop-Tarts. But they look just like Pop-Tarts. You know what I mean? And there's just a whole myriad of products, and the advertising is just all over the place. It just is.
The trouble is there's nobody to regulate that either. I mean, somebody makes a cookie with, say, 20 grams of THC in it, or somebody opposed makes one with 2. Not knowing that someone it's not, I mean, it's happened already. People have eaten that where it's so strong, they've gone and they've committed stupid stuff. Right. Because of not knowing, there's no regulation whatsoever. It's absolutely crazy.
Wasn't there an enforcement problem with the black market marijuana that probably doesn't look any different from the regular marijuana? How would you tell if someone's holding marijuana, if it's black market or regular?
Well, you wouldn't, other than if you had a medical card. If you had a medical card, then you could just say, I bought it, I guess.
They were, I mean, you had, like, when they were bringing in marijuana to these shops, I mean, they were, you know, you had armed, like, guards with M16s taking it in. It's like crazy.
And that's a problem, too. There's gonna be robberies and so on, because these dispensaries cannot deal with banks. Yeah. Because the bank does not, they don't recognize that money, so they can't use banks to keep it all in cash. At some point, someone's gonna figure this out and start robbing these places, and you have more problems.
There's just, I mean, we're talking, you know, I wanna talk specifically about the medical, you know, the medical that you guys are looking at, because a lot of people are saying, well, that seems reasonable. Okay, but there are things about it, you know, and it's why it's so important for people to be educated about the law. Because for Pennsylvania, there are certainly some sticking points that should be addressed that aren't gonna be. And it's going to be harder to fight a medical marijuana law than it is just a free use of marijuana like we were doing in Ohio. And as soon as that law went down, there's another group up, and they're working on a medical marijuana law. And a lot of people support it because it seems like the nicer thing to do. But again, it's not about it being mean to people, it's about it being a bad law. And that's what people aren't getting. And that's what when I was talking about, I said it's not about what I think about marijuana. It's a bad law. And even this is a hell of a lot better than what we had, but there's still too many places to go that are troublesome.
I have a friend who's a therapist, and she works in corrections, and she said that the marijuana for medical use is not going to be strong like the street marijuana. It's going to be different because it's not going to have certain substances in it. What do you think about that?
I think it depends on what the prescription is.
Okay.
Because there are oils that can go anywhere from, they can go up to, what, we said 80% THC.
Yeah, that's what she said, THC. She said it's not going to have any THC.
That's CBDs. That's what they're using for the seizures.
You help me out, because we get into the
CBDs.
THCs.
That's an extract that they take. They grow the plant without any THC in it. It only has the CBDs in it, which is another chemical that's in it. That's what they use for the seizures and so on. That's what they're giving the excuse.
But that's not what people want.
Right, and that's not the people that want it for recreation, whatever, or even medical supposedly don't want that, because that doesn't get you high.
I understand
That just gives you the chemical you need to control the seizures.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, there can be many different forms and strengths of marijuana. Today, I mean, like you said, from what it was 30 years ago to what it is today, it's a different world. It's a totally different world. I mean, it's nothing like it was before. So to be able to know exactly what you're smoking, you don't really know.
Yeah.
When you go into one of these shops, they tell you it's 12%, it's 15%. But if you don't know, I mean, again, it's very dangerous. Like she said, there's so many unknowns and middle ground here that it's such a dangerous area that we are going to jumping into without knowing where we're jumping first. And that's the part that scares me.
That's my thing too.
Yes.
Is like let's get the answers first,
Right.
then put the laws into place. I don't think I'd say if they could, if there's ways to do this appropriately, I don't know if I wouldn't back it, but I'm not seeing
again,
that.
if it helps people, and again, if you're a reasonable, a responsible adult or whatever, it's your choice in life. You do what you want to do. But again, what I'm worried about are the young kids.
Right.
That we as adults set for them the precedents that we set by saying, yeah, okay, we can handle this.
But then I go back to it's like, to me, it's like the other drugs. We're looking for answers through medications, and they haven't been very good.
Right.
Yes, ma'am.
It seems to me that part of the problem is that this next generation, from what my friends tell me, by the age of 13, they know more than their parents, and their parents can't tell them anything. So even if you've got a reasonable, rational adult that takes the kid to the doctor and says, my kid has this problem and I think they need medical marijuana, the 13-year-old's gonna do whatever the 13-year-old's gonna do with it.
And that's, I equate that to when the treatment system asks an addict what sort of treatment they think they need. I think that's silly. I don't think addicts are very good at determining what level of care they need. It's why I like my program, it's why I like our level of accountability. So we don't tell them what they're gonna do. We don't ask them what they want. This is what you're gonna do. And if you don't do it, there's gonna be consequences to that.
But if they never learn consequences, it's really hard to put that in place.
I think
What's different now, though, is the internet. And for
Correct.
everything a parent will tell a child, there's other information out there that's contrary, and people still think that everything they read on the internet is correct. And you can support either position or any position you want with stuff from the internet. So the mother will say, this is bad for a child, or this is a dangerous drug, and there will be something on the internet to say, that's not so bad. There's research somewhere that says it isn't.
There's some very specific facts about, and I don't blame them, I blame us. I mean, it's our generation who's created it. If you want to read some interesting books about narcissism, we've created narcissists. We've created young people who don't believe they really have to do anything to get what they want. We believe that you can have fame easy. Look at the housewives, look at the Kardashians. They no particular skill, and they're making millions and millions of dollars. So you see these kids that don't have realistic expectations. I work in an office where I take calls all day from parents who are struggling, trying to figure out what the hell to do with these kids. And I am tough on parents, but I work through with them. And there's books about setting boundaries with your kids. Those are things you have to, setting boundaries with your adult children. There's things out there now that my parents didn't need books about that. They did it. We didn't do that. Our children were the center of our lives, and our schedules rotated around them. And so in their eyes, the world rotates around them, and they don't understand the way things work. So we've created an air of narcissism. When you add that to addiction, you've got people that want immediate gratification, and they don't know how to wait. Now, one of the things, the hardest thing to change is that piece of my addicts, because they may not be using, but when they call, it's like, I just called you, why haven't you called me back? It's like, wait a second, I'll get you when I can. And you have to point out, that's addictive behavior. Sit back, be patient, wait a second. And all those little kind of things are things that we have to reteach people in addiction, because they're so used to, being the center, and I've got 70 people on our caseload. You know what? I can't deal with you. We're arresting someone right now. You may have to wait till tomorrow. And it's very hard for them to do that because that's not where they are.
That's something that we say about every generation. When my kids were young back in the 1980s, we were complaining about the yuppies. They think that everything is given to them, everything's easy about them. When I was young back in the 60s, our parents were saying, we kids, we're just running around having a good time, and we're not. Every generation, we say, these young ones coming up, you know, we go from the hippies to the yuppies to the millennials. We're always saying that the problem is that we're teaching them something that it's the same thing. It's not that they're different. It's not that we're different. It's we need an educational system.
But in our situation, let's go back to what we were talking about before. What we have taught them, which is creating a bigger problem for this group, is that there are easy ways to get fixes, and those are through medications. And that is creating the epidemic, which we now have, and that's part of what we created in our kids.
But I'm saying that's every generation we've created.
But we didn't have this level of addiction.
The easiest thing we could get. It may be that the science is better, that it's easier now. But back in our generation, and the generation before that, whatever was the easiest way to get it, we got it from them.
But we didn't all die. But we didn't all die.
Yeah.
We've got a different game now. And it's a totally different game. We've got kids dying every single week because they've gotten themselves way in over their heads on stuff that they don't, you know, maybe we smoked weed, maybe we did this. Every generation has its rebellion. This is something that they can be physically addicted to within 30 days. There is not any time to dabble with this stuff. This stuff is killer. If you have the wrong brain, you're going to become an addict, and within 30 days you're going to become addicted physically to these medications. That's what's different. We see the problems every day, and you know, teachers deal with them, lawyers deal with them, social workers deal with them. But I think let's bring it back. Is what we're talking about specifically here is a generation who is who's dying, and that's the base of this. And what we're talking about specifically is the problems created by drug addiction. And there are so many directions we could go. I mean, I'd love to jump into conversations, but you guys want to get the hell out of here. So, yes, ma'am.
I just want to bring up one point that, like, I know we talk in this general generation term, and I completely agree with you on this. Like, that's definitely led into this. But realize too that that's not the entire generation. One of the biggest things, especially coming from you guys and being one of the only young people in the room to say,
excuse me.
Yeah. But it's just too, like, you may not be up on these technologies and that kind of thing. That's where really, like, bridging the gap between generations and finding those people who aren't part of the addiction problem kind of thing, and getting connected, like working with my students in the schools, like, and getting them really connected. They have a much better reach to their peers than I'll ever have, and I'm relatively young compared to a lot of our teachers. So I think that's a big thing is, like, while you talk in this generation, like, don't automatically write people off because, oh, you're a millennial, and like,
that's what I was
that kind of thing. So, but yes, I completely agree that, like, how we've been raised definitely plays into the addiction scheme.
Because this isn't just generational.
No.
We have people dying that are 50, 60
Absolutely.
years old. Okay, so this isn't just young people, this is millennials.
And it's less.
This is something that goes across the board.
Right, and it's more about how, as a populace, we all want easy answers to very difficult questions.
Right.
You know what? It's hard to be in depression for a long time. It's hard to be constantly anxious. I can't even imagine what it is. I have some back pain, but I know it doesn't even, you know, match what other people have to live with on a daily basis. And we want answers for those. And unfortunately, answers don't come that easy. We expect a pill to be our answer.
Right.
And it's created a
We're looking
big
for everything
mess.
instant, quick,
Yep.
fast right now. And that's because of social media.
Wait a minute, wait.
Cell phones, everything else. We're used to getting that real quick.
That's me.
Oh.
And there's my information, because I didn't bring cards. And you are welcome to call me, and you are welcome to come to our court Wednesday mornings at 8:30, second floor, Mahoney County Courthouse.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your attention. You were wonderful.